welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for today's video. I am going to talk to you guys about some of my favorite shades in my eyeshadow palettes. I know that this video has been done before, so I will link some of those videos down below where people have done like favorite shades and favorite palettes, but I thought today it might be fun to randomly generate 12 different eyeshadow palettes and tell you guys my favorite shades from those randomly generated palettes. So it'll kind of be like spur of the moment. I don't know what palettes are gonna get selected. You guys will see like my first impression looking at the palette and just like deciding on the spot what my favorite shade is. I mean, obviously some of them will probably be easier to decide than others, but I thought that this would be a fun video idea. I'm not sure that anyone has done it randomly before. If they have, I don't want to take credit from anyone, but I will also link below similar videos to this. So if you guys are excited about this video, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel, I hope you consider subscribing before you leave today. We love eyeshadow palettes on this channel, as well as project panning and other things. So if that's something that interests you, don't forget to subscribe before moving on. And other than that, let's just jump into the video. Currently sipping on Dunkin' Donuts Polar Peppermint Coffee. Would love to know if you guys are currently sipping on anything. I remember most of this year saying to you guys that I wanted to keep my palette collection at like 70 or 75 at the highest. It has quickly grown to 98. Now granted, quite a few of my most recent palette purchases have been like quads, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I just don't really care that my palette collection is high. I love eyeshadow palettes so much. I love to test new eyeshadow palettes, and I don't really care what my palette inventory is going forward. So just tossing that out there. So we have 98 palettes that we have to be randomly selected. A lot of these palettes are newer to my collection, so if we get those, it'll be really interesting to see what some of my decisions are. Okay, so we have 98 numbers to choose from, and we are gonna generate 12 numbers. So we have 65, 77, 90. 44, 31, and 8. Oh boy. 97, 50, 79, and then 74, 23, and 32. I'm gonna go grab all of those eyeshadow palettes. I won't peek inside, and then we will open them together and I will share with you guys my favorite shade from each of those palettes. Alright you guys, I grabbed all the palettes. Some are new, some are favorites, some I've had in my collection for quite a while, and I'm really excited to open these up and share with you guys my favorite shade. I'm gonna go in no particular order other than the order that they're sitting in front of me. So up first, I have the Tarte Love, Trust, and Fairy Dust palette. This was limited edition, and this was a palette that I wasn't planning to pick up. And then one day I was in stores and I was like, I just feel like I need this. It's a really beautiful mauve toned palette. If I could open it. It's a really, really beautiful mauve tone palette. I love mauve tones, so I still really enjoy this palette. And hands down, my favorite shade, I already knew before reaching into it, is this shade right here. So I'm gonna try and swatch all 12, but it's hard for me to swatch because of my tattoos. So I'm gonna swatch it on just like my arm. Sorry, you guys. I love this shade. It's such a stunning shade. I feel like a lot of my favorites are going to be shimmer shades because I love me a good shimmer that just like completes the look. But I love that this is just like a beautiful sort of mid-toned mauve, and I feel like you could use this with like a neutral brown, or you could use this with a purple look, like a purple mauve-y look, just to like make it more mauve, or just add a little bit of mauve to like a brown look, and I really like that shade. That is in the shade Magic in this palette. All right, another sort of mauve toned palette that was randomly selected was the Huda Beauty Nude Rich palette. I actually don't know what I'm going to choose from this palette, but I do enjoy this. So this is what the palette looks like, and by far I would say my favorite shade in this one is this one right here. Although I really do like all the shimmers and the majority of the mattes in this palette as well. I really like the Huda Nude Obsessions palettes. I think that they were gorgeous. So this is that shade right here. I love a lighter shimmer shade on the lids. So you guys will probably notice that a lot as we kind of go through. I really like all of the shades. The only two that I don't get a ton of use out of are this one, just because I'm not typically reaching into like these more like red toned shades, and then I don't reach for this one that often unless I'm really going to deepen up my look. Other than that, I think this is a beautiful palette. Next up, we have a newer palette to my collection. This is one of the Makeup by Mario quads, and this is in Bronzy Glam. Really, really beautiful. I knew immediately when this was a palette that was selected. This is my favorite shade because it's like a beautiful green gold shade. It's absolutely stunning. I cannot get enough of it. You guys know I love me a good green shade, and this is like kind of like that Dirty Money kind of shade. I just think it is absolutely beautiful. By far my favorite shade in this palette. I think this quad is really beautiful. Kind of expensive at $25, but one that I'm still really happy to have in my collection. One that I've had in my collection for a while was the Nubian Mini by Juvias. This is what this palette looks like. And for me, my favorite shade in here is this shimmery bronze shade. Again, you guys, it's gonna be probably like all shimmers. I mean, I like mattes to create a base, but I just feel like a look isn't complete without a shimmer. Oh, I love this shade for like a really deep kind of fall coppery sort of look. There is the shade from this palette. I just think it's absolutely beautiful. I love this palette in general. I think it's an amazing palette, so that is my favorite shade. Okay, I'm going to have to choose a matte shade because one of the palettes that was randomly generated was the Dose of Colors Marvelous Mauves palette, and for me, my favorite shade in this one is this shade right here. I just feel like this one adds like the most dimension without having it have to be like a super dark look, going with like that super deep purple. Yeah, that is stunning. I really love this shade. I don't reach into this palette as much as I used to. I typically prefer more like pink tone mauves rather than these purple tones, but this isn't one that I want to declutter, and I think even swatching this, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot how beautiful that is. I think Dose of Colors has a really good matte formula. It is definitely more powdery, so if you don't like powdery shadows, you don't like kick up, it's probably going to be a skip for you, but for me, I love the Dose of Colors eyeshadow formula, and that is my favorite shade from the Marvelous Mauves. Okay, next up we have the Too Faced Palm Spring Dreams palette, and this is not a palette that I've used a ton. This is what this palette looks like, and for me, it would definitely be between this kind of mauve toned matte and this shimmer right here. This is tough. I feel like, honestly, I would reach into this the most. This beautiful gold shimmer. Yes, I forgot how beautiful that is. Holy smokes. I need to reach for this again. Wow. Yes. Okay. I'm happy with my choice. Definitely. Again, I don't reach into this one that often. I thought that this Buzzkill shade was a bit of a dud, as well as, honestly, the blue in this was a dud as well. Not that we're talking about dud shades, but yes, to that gold shade. Definitely my favorite from the Too Faced Palm Spring Dreams palette. All right, next up we have the Juvia's Deuce palette. I already know which one I'm choosing for this, and it is this shade right here. I live for this shade. I think it is so pretty, and honestly, this one's pretty unique to my collection. It's very icy, and it pulls purple and pink kind of depending on what like light it hits. Mostly I use this as an inner corner highlight, but sometimes when I've done really purple looks in the past, I also have reached in and put this all over the lid. It is really intense all over the lid. I think it's stunning and definitely my favorite shade in the Juvia's Deuce palette. Next up, I promise I didn't cheat. This was legit. My Jackie Aina palette, ABH Jackie palette, was one of the randomly generated palettes, and we all know which one I'm going to choose, but I will say it would be a close second to Soleil and Zam because these are two absolutely stunning champagne shimmers, but it wouldn't be right to not go with the shade sponsored because we all know I love me a good shimmery green, and what I love about this is like it's just so unique because it does have that special sort of shift to it. My friend Sally has worn this alone all over her eyes, and it honestly doesn't even look like it doesn't even look like the shade in the pan. Like you can sheer this out, and this is just such a like multi-purpose shade. You can use it in so many different ways. It can pull so many different colors, and definitely my favorite shade in the ABH Jackie palette. Okay, one of my newer palettes, I have the Pat McGrath Quad. This is the one that is exclusive to her website, and it has the really pretty lavender shade, which when I purchased this palette, I really purchased it for this lavender. But honestly, my favorite shade in this palette is this one right here. You guys, like you aren't even going to believe how beautiful this shade is. Okay, that is not doing it justice on camera at all. It's right here. That's not doing it justice at all. In person, it's like the most intense foiled pink. I don't know if it's gonna come across. It looks like it does not look the same on camera, but this shade, I am telling you, is like, it makes this palette. It is so beautiful. It's really intense. It's that Pat McGrath kind of special formula. It's not necessarily like a duochrome, but it's just so intensely foiled. Yeah, it is kind of a duochrome because it's either like a really intense like purple pink, or if it hits the light right, it's kind of like a peachy gold. It's so pretty. I absolutely love that shade, and I'm so happy to have this palette specifically for that shade. Another new one to my collection is the Charlotte Tilbury palette of Pops in Pillow Talk, and I already know my favorite one is this one. I'm just gonna try not to blind you. It's the lightest of the shimmers, and the reason I love this one so much is because if I just put this on my lid with nothing else, it gives the most glossy effect to the lid. It just gives this like wet sort of appearance to the lid, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. It really doesn't look like anything special swatched, but I really like this as a one and done shadow on the eyes, and it would definitely be my favorite shade in the Charlotte Tilbury palette of Pops in Pillow Talk. Two palettes left. I randomly generated the Lawless The One palette. You guys know this was not a favorite palette by any means in my eyes, but my favorite shade would be this one right here. This is in the shade Obsessed, and it's this really beautiful bronzy shade. This is one of the better performing shades in this palette. There it is right there. It's not like the absolute most intense shadow. I feel like the swatch makes it look a little bit more intense than it actually performs on the eyes, but it is really pretty, and it does make for a really beautiful, just neutral bronzy look. A lot of the mattes in this palette were kind of a bust for me. Really dry, got hard pan right away, not easy to blend. So I really didn't love a lot. I really didn't love a lot of the shades from this palette. So it wasn't a hard choice. This is one of the better performing shadows, so obviously gonna have to go with this as my favorite from the One palette from Lawless. And then the last palette is the Natasha Dreamy 2 palette. I absolutely love this palette, and this one is really tough. Reaching into it immediately, I was like, yep, I know I'm gonna go with this purple. This is like why I bought the palette. But then looking in, I'm like, oh, I also love this blue and these as well. I really like the different finishes that you get in this palette are just so interesting and unique. But truly, I feel like I just gotta go with my gut on this one and go with this shade Mirabilia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. This one does not do it justice with its swatch, but this on the eyes is just such an interesting shade. The way that it catches the light, I just think it's absolutely stunning. I love like purples with like a lavender base. I just think they're so beautiful, and this would definitely be a tough choice, but my favorite from the Natasha Dreamy palette. And these are all of my randomly selected favorite shades from those 12 randomly generated palettes. Let me know if you guys like this video, and maybe I can do it again, but like take out the palettes that I've already selected and we can like keep going. Let me know if you like this video. I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for sticking around to support my channel and this video, and I will catch you guys in my next one. Bye.